Welcome to the Emotional Endurance Movement, where we chit-chat about how we're staying regulated in a very dysregulating world.
Come along with us as we deal with life's messiness.
I'm Laurie Sharp-Page.
And I'm Crimson MacDonald. And this week we're talking about...
We're all one step away from being the rolling dumpster fire going through the hurricane waters.
I want to talk about something that is very targeted to certain people, but I think it's important for everyone to listen to because it's coping with management, and that can go both ways, right?
Oh, yeah.
Coping with managing and coping with being managed.
Yeah, both are something you have to learn how to cope with, whatever you do. Because, I mean, this obviously is a lot about work, but it's also about like every volunteer setting often has some level of hierarchy. Even like your community centers, religious groups, often there's some level of spoken or unspoken hierarchy. So like, and even just sometimes in life, just like in school, we get assigned group projects, so that's another, another fun one. Oh man, it's so great when like you find out there's a group project and the whole room goes, oh.
No, God, group projects. And I was always the person that was just like, I'll do it all.
Yes. Save me from having to do the tough work of coping with managing people, right?
Well, and it's really funny when you think about the arc of like, because now that I'm old, I am like queen delegator. I did grassroots organization. Like, I am the last person to hoard it all because I really like believe in collaboration. But at that phase of my life, and with the lack of emotional endurance and to do the labor of like managing my expectations against others, I just took the work.
So what you're telling me is that you've actually grown.
Oh yeah.
To be much more tolerant to the challenges of managing people. What do you think? What are you name the challenges of managing people?
Oh gosh. Okay, so managing people, I mean, humans are diverse and expectations are diverse and personalities are diverse. And so
I want to translate what you said, and this is going to be one of those insert clip moments here. I have learned through my journeys, professionally, personally, the whole gamut, right? I think I've learned that we're all either one step away from or one step away to being the rolling dumpster fire going through the hurricane waters. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I think there has to be a space here where we just say that humans are messy. So sorry, humans. But I am too. Like, we all are, or at least like we're naturally that way, and it takes work and intention to have the hygiene. I know, emotional hygiene. Yeah. Everybody's like, oh, but it's true. The emotional hygiene to keep your mess from cluttering your way and the ways of others along the way.
Right. And I say managing's hard, but I mean, I don't know, like, ask anybody that had to manage me. I can only imagine, like, I was the worst probably to manage. And so
those with assertive communication skills.
I did not have the people pleaser thing going down, so that was hindering to my ability. But I think that the biggest thing I've seen, and I mean this is on every TikTok and everywhere you go, is I think we have seen a trend over the last 5 years where being a manager can sometimes feel like being a therapist. And that is one of the most concerning issues I see with coping with management right now, because we all know that you don't quit a job, you quit a manager. I think everyone relates to that sentiment. And also in corporate structures and certain systems, rise to management, it may not be because of their people skills or their necessarily like their abilities. It might be because of their performance in other avenues. So you can get the wrong people to manage. And
because managing is a skill set. It is a skill set. And I think we got to open up the conversation and say, not everybody's going to enjoy the skill set. And it's not really something you can assess until you're there. And I do think a lot of people get stuck in this trap of like, what does this mean? This is the way forward for most people career-wise. And I don't like the skill set. And I think that gets a lot of people stuck, burned out, dysregulated, and maybe then taking it out on their team, and it ripples out. Because the other thing is, it is, in my opinion, unhealthy to solely get your emotional needs met at work. I think you should get some wins as far as like your emotional needs at work. I think all that's good, but to rely on work to be the place to meet your emotional needs is an unhealthy dynamic, and it sets an unhealthy precedent for not only you, but the people around you, especially if you are a manager, because you hold a position of power over people, and it's very easy for that power differential to influence how people respond and behave to you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I worked for an agency that took us on a cruise and didn't let us bring any family. And I look back at that, and a lot of these people are now executive coaches. And I mean, I look back at that, and I hope they do too. It's like, I mean, even then I was 28, and even then I was like, we should not do this. It was a reward.
This was a reward.
You might be
go on vacation.
You might be getting your social and emotional needs met at work. If as a manager you want to go on vacation with the people you manage,
just your buds,
to reward them,
and not their
because
family.
But it like builds in this like work.
But like I can understand like financially why they couldn't bring family, but you're saying this was like they were trying to like monopolize your time for that. How long were you guys gone for?
4 days.
This was a reward.
On a boat.
I gotta be honest. On a shitty boat with your work colleagues.
I couldn't figure out why it was so shitty.
And you were out in the open. You were out in the open, and this was a reward. That doesn't. Sometimes I wonder, like, what would have happened if I would have stayed in the career world, and then like I hear a story like that, and I'm like, yeah, no, I would not have fared well.
I mean, and I was like so resistant to it. And it was like, no, you know, you got to go, because it was like only people.
Oh, and you had to go.
Yeah, but there was I was the last person to sign up. I will say that. I was super resistant, and lots of really bad things happened on that. And I'm just glad like I was the leader of this organization. I never have to like wear this. It's like, I'm not going to say I'm a victim at all. I opted in, and it was
an undeniable reward that took you into international waters.
Is that like Nassau? I was stuck on Nassau for a day. That was awful.
Yeah, you were in the Bahamas, so you were in international waters.
So my point being is that like for my first like, and I will give the credit, like that was in that moment, especially the healthiest work environment I was in. But it felt like it because for my age and for where I was in life, it was like, okay, like I don't have kids. I don't like whatever. But looking back, it's kind of like looking back at when I was 15 and a bunch of 20-year-old dudes hung out with like me and my friends. I'm like, that was inappropriate. I look back at that experience like, what adult made that decision? Like that just is so inappropriate. But at the time I was 28 and I was like, this is inappropriate. But I was like, well, I've never been on a cruise. What do I got to lose? I think some people lost a lot, but I left with my dignity, and I have
intrigue.
Well, I have a lot of fun stories.
This would be totally. We could call this like Crimson Secret Cruise.
No, maybe it's a book. Maybe what happened on that cruise ship is content? A book.
I am exhausted. I can't shut my brain off. I don't feel equipped to deal with any of this. And the truth is, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up.
If thoughts like that sound familiar, you're not alone. Cope 365 is here to help you stop the spiral, using a simple, gamified approach that shows you how to cope in ways that actually work. You can stop lashing out, shutting down, or just pretending you're fine while you suffer in silence and instead learn to regulate, recover, and keep going without burning out or losing your relationships or yourself. Cope 365 is here to help you fortify what matters most, your capacity to endure so that stress doesn't steal your joy, your health, or your future. Go to cope365.com and enter promo code EMM for 30% off of any of our packages.
I'm going to redirect this conversation right now and go back to the fact that there is a serious piece here that you brushed up upon, and then we took a surprising turn down memory lane on that one, but which is the unpaid emotional labor that we ask people to do at work every single day.
Yep. Yeah,
right?
I mean, right. Armchair managers, or just the person on the team that absorbs everyone's drama. I mean, there are
the people that are desperately trying to co-regulate with the people around them so that they can get their work done. The HR department that's dealing with the conflict and the chaos caused by one single dysregulated person who deserves our compassion. Who knows what's going on in that person's life? And we need to know how to shift that sort of behavior in workplace and group dynamics so that we can get the job done. Otherwise, it can get pretty messy pretty fast. Like a shitty cruise ship full of people that are forced to be there for work for 4 days without their spouses.
Unlimited alcohol.
Oh my God. I have to stop talking about this. Like, what liability insurance covers this little?
Well, luckily we made it through. We made it through.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it.
I mean, emotionally, I think all of us. And again, there's like a weird pact that we all just like buried the trauma of it.
Yeah.
Together.
Yeah. But I think we're unearthing that pact a little bit.
I mean, no, you don't know the stories. But regardless, I think that, so let's talk about from the standpoint of being managed. Yeah. Oh my God, having an emotionally dysregulated manager is the worst experience you'll ever have in your entire life.
Yeah.
I mean,
tough. I mean, especially if it's happening consistently. Even it happening once can cause a rupture in a relationship, but if it's happening consistently, chronically, in a way that feels uncomfortable for you, it can be traumatizing for sure.
Oh, I mean, it has been. And I mean, it becomes a place where you're no longer showing up to get the work done. You're walking on eggshells.
So we believe that everybody should be accountable to do this work. Everybody. This is a human thing. We all have to know if we're in a state of emotional regulation versus dysregulation. Emotional regulation versus dysregulation. We got to be able to know how we can kind of effectively shift states when we have the power to do so. We don't always have the power to do so. We need to have compassion for each other that we're all kind of doing this, and we need to constantly working to build and equip ourselves to cope with the challenges that are ahead, because they're always new, they're always different. And honestly, they seem like as we age, like they get bigger, they get more intense, they get different. And it's just something that we believe that everybody has to do. Everybody should be held accountable to do that.
Including
not everybody has that belief, right? And so, you know, we understand that too, but that is where we're coming from in this conversation. And I think what's really important when we talk about workplaces is that we give managers who are acting out in this way the benefit of the doubt that they don't fully understand what they're doing and what that means, and give them the opportunity to course correct and to change the behavior. And we can't, just because we've identified somebody as, you know, engaging in this really poor behavior, and certainly there are things here like abuse, when it goes to a level of abuse or any type of lack of safety in a situation, we have to deal with this firmly, and we have to give people an on-ramp and tools to engage differently. Otherwise, it's just going to become a source of tension while the same pattern plays out again and again. And I think that's where the really damaging part of this is the pattern. And that is part of the cycle breaking that we hope to bring in these conversations in our company, is just the education to interrupt these poor, toxic, or even abusive patterns with at least new information and new language. The other thing I think we really want to empower people with is you cannot change somebody else's behavior. So even if somebody is dysregulated around you, it is not your job to co-regulate with them to make them shift, to make them change. You really can't.
No.
Now, obviously, in a situation, an acute situation or a trauma situation, we're humans. We do what we do. Nobody's asking you to know how to perfectly do this all the time. But it is important to recognize that your control starts and ends with your response to it.
Right.
So if somebody around you is dysregulated, you are not in a position of empowerment to change them. You're in a position of empowerment to change yourself. And that is probably the most radical thing that we preach, but it is the most freeing, in my opinion. And when you think about managing people, I think it's an essential skill set. You have to be able to say that somebody else's emotional state and well-being is not within your control. And you have to empower them to take care of that part of themselves while you do that work as well for yourself.
Yeah, and I think in the workplace specifically, it's hard to have the conversation. And I hope Sprouting Change is a company that will do that. It comes in and says, we're not going to let this be the elephant in the room anymore.
Yeah. Or as I like to say, the lemon in the room,
exactly.
That the impact that it has when just one person shows up dysregulated to work, and
Yeah.
the ripple impact that has. And it can be small. These can be innocuous things that are like not things that we would, that old phrase, like choose your battles. I'm not saying that all of these would be reasons to validate what we're asking people to do, but what we're saying is that these micro things add up. So, it's the difference between, coming in and trauma barfing,
right.
whatever happened to you this morning that was upsetting and dysregulating, and putting that on the person next to them. And then potentially there is a viral spread, of dysregulation. So those things that are a little bit more up, but it can also be just coming in with like a bad attitude or a belief that today is going to be a failure or something like that, and how that influences it. And then, of course, it can be really severe, like what we're talking about here with like you're messing with people's sense of self-worth or identity or emotional safety at work,
Yeah.
So it can really run the gamut. But these micro changes, and really focusing on the small stuff are how we rebuild a more regulated system and a more regulated team that is ultimately, I believe, easier to manage. But we're not controlling them to manage them differently. We're empowering them so that the system all runs better together.
It's what I like to say. And this is obviously a top-down view, but it is nice if you are a leader in an organization, you should have a personal investment in the emotional endurance of your whole team.
Yeah.
Because, when you talk to leaders, entrepreneurs, people that are really reliant on their teams, they feel the weight that they're carrying is carried alone. When you have an endurant team, they're there for the right reasons, they're getting their cup filled the right way, then the weight is leveled among everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone will feel personal ownership. So providing a space for emotional safety, and I don't say that in like a emotional safe space or in a political way. I just mean if people feel like they can show up to work and be honest and they're equipped with the right language about where their emotional reserves are and what they're failing at, then as a manager or team member, collaborator, you can assess how best to leverage that person in that moment to pull out their strengths and to keep them away from their weaknesses. And so that is the hope with this language, with the emotional endurance movement, with the work that we're doing is trying to bring people that language, open the door of having that conversation to prevent the resentment that comes from having to be the armchair manager, of having...
they really, and I think a lot of managers struggle with this because they really care about the people that they work with, right? And they're coming from a space of care. But the best thing you can do for that person is to encourage them to find a space outside of work, a way outside of work, a moment, some time, some support outside of work, whatever that is. that really empowers them to learn ways to take care of themselves so that they don't come to work dysregulated, because it's not good for them. It's not good for the organization. And also, as usual, I feel compelled to add this point. There's no perfection. Like, it's going to happen. I'm not saying that like this isn't a conversation you may have to have a couple of times, but if you are clear in the boundaries, the expectations, and give people on ramps to learn these things, to do these things differently, I mean, we've seen in our own lives, it cleans up their capacity.
Absolutely.
Right. And so they're more equipped to show up with a good capacity to do whatever their job is. And there are a lot of jobs that, like, look, there's not a lot of emotional labor. And then there's a lot of jobs where there is an emotional labor.
It's just built in.
We don't really talk about that. And there's definitely not a difference in compensation based off that. In fact, there's actually been
like a reverse.
Yeah. So I think that's an important piece of this conversation too, is that emotional labor is not valued in our culture. It's not seen as economic, but it is highly economic. And we need to address that. We need to think about that as we move forward with careers, especially as AI continues to develop and the work of emotional labor can't necessarily be translated in that avenue like a lot of jobs can be, right? Or skills can be.
Right.
So all that to say that managing people is complicated.
And there's no right path. And I think
no,
that's the problem.
Improvisational, right? Again, here we are. It's the same as conscious coping. It's improvisational, interdisciplinary. You always got to be reaching for the right tool. And this is whether you're the manager or the managee, right? But I think looking at coping with managing people is a great way to kind of set the compassionate lens for the fact that we're all going through this in different ways, because there's multiple nuanced ways you can kind of be experiencing this and be triggered by this. And certainly humans can trigger each other, even when we're well-meaning, you know, both people have like good vibes and I don't know, pheromones or something. I don't know. Crazy stuff happens. But I think if we can really look at this as like with compassion for each other and with understanding that we're not striving for perfection, but we're striving for some level of accountability so we can limit the disruption that it's emotional regulation plays out in our lives. And workplace, honestly, is the one we got into workplaces because we feel like it's the one that's been talked about the least, because nobody knows how to deal with it.
Well, and we shouldn't even say talked about the least. It's talked about excessively, actually. And this is an issue I've had. So in the last year, since I've been pulled into like more of an organizational psychology world and going out and like getting my toes wet in this space, there's a lot of people talking about the problem. I mean, the number of people talking about the problem. Nobody's denying that we have generational differences, remote, hybrid. I mean, if you talk about the major systematic issues that corporations, leaders are going through, you can find a lunch and learn, a meetup, a breakout session, anywhere about the problem. We're all willing to talk about it, but it's the solution. I think that is where the gap has always been. And I think that's why we were like, why aren't we talking about it in the workplace? Our kids are coming home drawing amygdalas.
Yeah.
Like, so they're getting equipped with this. And then we wonder why we have a okay boomer,
emotionally toxic,
screw millennials, they don't work,
workplace
like
dynamics.
Gen X, I'm forgotten. Like, of course we're going to have those dynamics, because for some reason the workplace stayed too polite. There's just been this
avoidant. It's been avoidant because it's a lot. I'm glad you bring this up, and I think this should be our next episode, because there's a lot of coping with both the problem of emotional regulation in workplaces, and there's been some resistance around the solutions too.
Yes.
So I think that's what we need to talk about, is coping with the problems and the solutions of emotional regulation at work. And I really want to be clear with our listeners that even though our company is very B2B focused, like, this is individual work that you don't need a company to endorse you to do this. We're just trying to bring it to orgs because we believe we can have a huge value by equipping a whole organization. But we can also have a huge value by equipping you. And in fact, we have our own individual solutions tailored for individuals. So you might want to go and check out our website at sprouting-change.com and check out some of our individual offerings if you would like to utilize our expertise to help you grow your emotional endurance. That's what we've been doing, and it's made a big difference, right?
Yeah, it's a game changer. It changes many aspects of your life with very small effort at the end of the day. Just being aware that I'm empowered in that moment to control my reaction, it makes me feel like I have the agency or control.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the Emotional Endurance Movement. Make sure to like and follow us for more great coping and emotional endurance content. And remember, you're not alone. We'd love to hear from you. Check out the show notes and let us know how you're coping, what you're coping with, and how we can support you.